What's going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Thank you guys so much for coming back to the channel, and if you guys are new, welcome. As you can see, we are taking it to a Renewal Grasps Hunter build for y'all that you can take into that Onslaught realm to get you guys those shiny god rolls of all of these banging weapons that we have. Hammerhead is absolutely juicy, Mountaintop is back, and tomorrow we're getting Luna's Howl and Blast Furnace, so get ready to use this bad boy to get all those legendary clears. Go through your normal versions as well, and we will get into it with the Renewal Grasps perk first, which is called Depth of Duskfield. So your Duskfield grenades have a much larger effect radius. Allies inside the Duskfield take reduced damage, and targets inside of the area deal reduced damage as well. So this is kind of nutty how much resistance I feel like we get inside of that Duskfield, especially if you throw it on the ADU or something like that when you have a bunch of enemies pushing you, or when you gotta go capture those mines, the different points, stuff like that, objectives around the areas. This is a wonderful build for that, and the ability to keep adds at bay with the stasis, freeze, and slow is beautiful. So this is a wonderful build for taking it into Onslaught. Now, as for our mods and stats that we are going for, with this I built it out for 100 resilience on this so we can stay alive longer. Definitely need it in some of those later 35 and up waves of Onslaught. I chose to go with discipline and strength as my other two that I built it out. Obviously you don't have to have triple 100s, but that's what I built out personally for my three highest stats, with resilience being my first choice, then discipline, then strength. But they allow us to spam our abilities with our Duskfield grenades, super important, and then as well as slow and freeze targets with our shurikens as much as possible. So it is a beautiful little synergy of both of those. Now when we move on to our mods, we're going to be using Stasis Siphon right here. So our stasis weapons are going to create orbs of power. With that heavy ammo finder, we're having two different options for our heavies, one more for DPS, also add clear, and then we also got our powerful friends, of course, to share that armor charge with our fellow guardians when we pick up those orbs of power. Now we're going to be using that armor charge to get our grenade kickstart, so we can have our Duskfield up even more often to use that protection of the Duskfield grenade right there in our Renewal Grasps. We're also going to be using bolstering detonation, which grants us that class ability when we cause damage with the Duskfield, as well as impact induction, so when we cause damage with our shurikens. One of the reasons why I tried to build the strength up as high as we could, we are going to get our grenade back, so a nice little feedback loop of getting our grenade as fast as possible. As for our chest piece, went with arc and void resistance, was getting dapped up by those acolytes inside of Onslaught, so it was a good little combination. Ogres, you can switch these on and off for whatever enemies are in that Onslaught. I went with charged up so we could have even more armor charge, which allows us to get even more energy back via our grenade kickstarter. On our boots right here, we got our elemental charge, which when we pick up all of those stasis shards that we are going to be creating, it's going to be able to have a chance to give us an armor charge. So not just by picking up orbs of power using charged up, we are going to be able to collect all of those stasis shards and get a good amount of armor charge for our grenade kickstarter. Recuperation as well as innervation, when we pick up all of those orbs, we're going to get our grenade back as well as a little bit of our health. On top of that, when we dodge, we're going to get grenade energy, so it's all about our grenade energy for Duskfields, obviously, because they are crazy, like I said, when you stand inside of them with Reaper, so we can get even more orbs of power after we dodge. Our other weapons can also create those orbs. Now, as for weapons, I went with the Wicked Implement. This might be a little controversial, but I absolutely love this thing for Onslaught. Right here, we got Tithing Harvest. Well, we have the Creeping Attrition activated, destroying those stasis crystals or landing precision blows create stasis shards. These stasis shards return to you. Collecting these refill the magazine, so these count also towards the stasis shards that we create via our abilities, so we overflow this thing up to 30 bullets basically consistently. We don't have to reload almost at all. On top of that, while we are landing those precision shots, it causes targets to become slowed. We can freeze them as well, so this works for our champions in Unstoppable as well as Overload just intrinsically with this weapon, plus being being able to keep any of those enemies at bay. Those yellow orange bars make it very, very nice to just have that applied freeze without using your abilities even. Second option right here, which I absolutely love this thing, we have a 1200 defeats with it. We got the Volt Shot Beacon Rounds Indebted Kindness with that rocket assisted frame. Absolutely daps up all of the enemies inside of the Onslaught realm. Very, very good weapon. Warlord's Ruin is where it comes from, the first encounter, so go farm that. Very easy first boss to go through even solo. Now for our heavies, had a couple different options for y'all. The first one we got is the Dimensional Hypo-Tricoid. So this is that compressed waveframe legendary grenade launcher. We're gonna have Envious Assassin with chain reaction on this, and those Nano Tracer rockets for a little bit of extra damage. It seems like this wouldn't proc that often, but it does have a nice little explosion to it with the chain reaction. Almost 1,000 defeats on it, and most of them have come just from the Onslaught realm. So this is very good with destroying crystals, and it also does a good amount of damage. I'm having like 12 of those shots in there, so it can do a bunch of ad clear as well. The second option that I got right here is the Quillam's Terminus. It is a raid weapon from the King's Fall. We got the enhanced killing tally, enhanced unrelenting on this, so we get a little bit of health regen as well as getting that enhanced damage over time with those defeats. High impact frame, so it is slow firing, high damage. Very nice for doing some of that ad clear on certain waves of enemies, or when you're going into the boss room. If you see that Shrieker, the wave frame doesn't really hit that, or even the Witch sometimes it doesn't hit, so it's nice to switch onto this LMG so you can really do that damage and participate in the boss room fights. Now, as for our artifact, not too much that we are using, really only the piercing sidearms with this, and then mainly Hailstorm, so shattering those frozen targets or stasis crystals does increase the damage. Also, it releases shards that damage and slow targets, so it helps us with the ad clear and just slowing those waves of enemies towards the ADU. Plus, Pillar of Ice, defeating those frozen targets, spawn us even more stasis crystals, so these pair perfectly together, creating us even more shards, which will overflow our weapon for us. On top of that, Dragon's Bite, breaking a shield combatant with strand or stasis weapons, has a chance to suspend or freeze. So for us, we're going to be able to get that freeze of combatants with this a little bit easier. Sometimes, not all the time, obviously, it's just a chance of it happening, but it's a little addition to this build, as well as Wished into Being. While your super is nearly fully charged, ability final blows spawn orbs of power. Since we're using abilities heavy in this with our shuriken specifically, and then our Duskfield grenade, it is a good little bit of extra orbs that we're going to be creating for our fellow guardians. Now, as for our subclass, we got our Silence and Squall, of course, very good for Onslaught as well, keeping enemies at bay. That little tornado lasts forever. Now, we are going to be using Gambler's Dodge because, like I said, we are trying to get our Withering Blade, our little shurikens, up as often as possible because of the slow freeze potential, as well as our mods that'll help us to get our Duskfield grenade back as well, which this is super essential for this build, obviously, because of our Renewal Grasp, slow and freezes targets inside of it, as well as with those Renewal Grasps, everybody inside of it does less damage to us, and we take less damage in general, as well as our allies. Now, helping this out, we got Grim Harvest, defeating those slow or frozen combatants, create those stasis shards. These shards grant us melee energy when we pick them up, on top of the melee energy that we're getting for Withering Blade. Our nice exotic that we are using in that scout rifle also has the overload potential when we pick up those stasis shards, so it is a beautiful little synergy of that. On top of it, Touch of Winter, our Duskfield has an increased slow field size and creates a small stasis crystal on impact, so this stacks with the increased size and everything of Renewal Grasps, so it makes our Duskfield even better than it is with just the exotic perk. And on top of that, we get the stasis crystal, which we can shatter or create stasis shards, which gives us our melee as well as refunds ammo to our weapon. Now for our fragments, we got Whisper of Rhyme. We're we're getting that overshield when we collect those stasis shards as well, so it is a triple threat with those stasis shards. Collecting them not only gives us our withering blade, gives us the grim harvest, gives us whisper of rhymes, it also refills our exotic pulse rifle, our exotic scout rifle, so it is a beautiful fragment to have on. We are going with whisper of conduction, so all of those shards track to our position, so we don't even gotta go out and grab them. Makes it really easy, especially when you got stuff like those exploding shanks, those cursed thralls, as waves of enemies in Onslaught. Next off, we got the increased size and damage versus those stasis crystals or those frozen targets. So it is a pair of basically everything. We're going to be freezing targets consistently with our weapon, with our abilities, and it'll just increase that damage explosion. We have it also on our artifact, which it does stack. Now we are going to go with Whisper of Chains, so while we are near those frozen or stasis crystals, we take reduced damage, so which also helps with this Duskfield grenade. When we throw that stasis crystal down and it creates it, we can go stand right next to it, boss phase it, so it adds to the damage reducing effects of the Renewal Grasps plus Whisper of Chains on top of it, so it is a beautiful combination there, plus all the slows that we are going to be using, which counts as the one from our weapon, from our Duskfield, and from our shuriken is going to last even longer. So this build is super good at support, if you will, or just keeping adds at bay with the a little bit less of the damage side of things, like if you were using a Strand Titan or something like that, Dragon's Breath on a Warlock. But it is a nice build for keeping everything at bay, and like I said, to do that little bit of extra damage, you can throw on that killing tally LMG that you got, so you can get that procced and just keep pumping out damage to some of those enemies. Plus the grenade launcher, when you got those stasis crystals frozen enemies, it shatters everything with its wave frame, so it is a beautiful combination in my personal opinion. I love this build. Went pretty far into the legendary version with it, so it'll get through everything from that normal version all the way to your legendary versions, as long as you got your teammates to help you out, because it does get hectic. Like I said, after that 35 it gets a little bit crazy, but the Duskfield will definitely help you out with that resistance. So I appreciate all you guys for coming back to the channel here. It means a lot. Make sure you slap that bell if you haven't liked the video, and subscribe helps me out a bunch. Also, you will not miss out on any of the content that we put out here with god rolls, builds, stuff like that. So I appreciate all you guys again, and I will catch y'all in the next one. We got our Pantheon coming up this week, as well as Luna's Howl and Blast Furnace, so be ready for those videos. I will catch y'all in the next one.